It was already 11:10. Tsubaki glanced at the clock on Central Boulevard to double-check the time. After parting with Haru, she had been on her own, following the kidnapper's instructions by herself. Almost right after the mall opened, she walked in. Per the criminal's demands, she spent 6,000 yen on a cheap attaché case. The ransom, worth virtually everything the entire family owns, was already in that briefcase. Tsubaki dialed on the cell phone Haru gave her. It was strong in both battery life and signal. The call connected quickly. The kidnapper's captivating voice circled around her ear. She had no idea what he was talking about. She had no choice but to rush with her brother's life on the line. Tsubaki could only give a faint response. The call was suddenly disconnected. Tsubaki stopped and looked around, searching for Haru. However, sweeping her gaze through the bustling sea of people, she couldn't spot that attention-grabbing hair. She should be following me right now. Tsubaki gripped her briefcase, cutting through the chaotic streets. 30 minutes at the very most. 20 minutes should be enough time to reach the park from the department store on foot, even for a girl. Even though I told Tsubaki that we would meet, I have no intentions of fulfilling that promise. I need to confirm one thing before I take the ransom. Whether or not the delivery person is truly obedient to the kidnapper. In other words, I need to determine whether or not she has the sense of responsibility and the stamina required for successful exchange. And, most importantly, whether or not she has contacted the police. So, 30 minutes. My gaze followed to the minute hand on my watch. I believe that if she's still not here within 30 minutes, then without a doubt the police will be coming with her. If Tsubaki's family has ignored my warnings and called the police, there might be over 100 officers watching Tsubaki deliver the ransom. In order to capture me, countless police officers would have already begun setting an inescapable net at the park. However, no matter how quickly the task force responds, doing so would still take a considerable amount of time. After all, the police would have to move everyone from Central Boulevard to this park. They wouldn't allow Tsubaki to proceed until they finished organizing their members. That's why I'm being so sensitive to time. If I don't spot Tsubaki within 30 minutes, I have no choice but to cancel the exchange. Visibility in the park is excellent. If there are undercover cops about, I might be able to spot them. However, I don't have the confidence to say that I could do so with absolute certainty. For instance, if you were to ask me who stands out the most, there are two middle-aged couples, a man walking a dog, a man who looks like he's on his way to the office, and an old man helping a pregnant woman. There are simply too many suspects. Thus, the least I should do is remember the faces of everyone here. That way, if a person with a familiar face shows up as I ordered Tsubaki around, I can determine with high confidence that the person is with the police. I sat on a bench, scanning the area, searching for signs of law enforcement. I saw Tsubaki. She was sprinting to the billboard with all her strength. A girl wearing casual clothes and carrying an attaché case is very conspicuous. If a person with an overactive imagination saw Tsubaki right now, they might think that she looks like she's running to deliver a ransom. I checked the time. It's been less than 15 minutes since the last contact. Well, then it's about time to issue the next order. However, I need to act under the assumption that there are already undercover police searching the park. If that is indeed the case, then I definitely can't call her immediately. The moment Tsubaki picks up, they'll be searching the park frantically for anyone talking on a phone. Before leaving, I took a second to look at Tsubaki in the distance. Even from afar, I could see she was nervous. She waited for almost an hour. Tsubaki was nearly suffocating from the anxiety. Even though she came to the appointed place, not a single person who seemed like the kidnapper has shown up. The only people who have come to talk to her are flirtatious young men, not knowing anything about the situation. Her cell phone suddenly rang. The kidnapper is calling. She yelled into the phone. The kidnapper groaned in discontent. The kidnapper's instructions are what made her stand out so badly, but she kept this thought to herself out of fear. Tsubaki was lost. She searched for Haru without thinking, but she couldn't even find a thread of her being. Lodging the cell between her head and shoulders, she used her free hands to open her diary. The warning was probably prepared by him beforehand. Tsubaki waited for her next instructions. A train to a different city? That's the final stop of the line in the next prefecture. From Central Boulevard, the trip will take 2 hours. Just what is he planning to have me do, calling me out that far? He used a frivolous tone. He's probably just messing with her. Tsubaki's unreleased emotions are rising and crashing inside her chest, waiting to explode at the lightest to touch. Flames of anger began to swell within the girl. Yet even with Tsubaki in this state, the kidnapper spoke to her in a mocking tone. She herself was surprised at the strength and harshness in her words. An unbearable silence followed. Terror attacked her. She may have angered the kidnapper. An inappropriate provocation may bring disaster upon Hiroaki. If that truly happened, how could she possibly endure the knowledge that she was responsible? The criminal spoke quietly. What does he mean by that? His words only confused her. Just as she was about to ask, the connection was cut. Into a human? Does that have some kind of philosophical meaning? She's never been good at understanding hidden meanings. And besides, it's natural for her not to understand the ideas of an evildoer, of a man who kidnapped a child. She collected her feelings and walked to the station. As she was waiting for the light to change, someone spoke out to her.
Tsubaki, そのまま聞け.
Tsubaki had no idea when she had appeared, but Haru was standing by her side. She spoke to Tsubaki, keeping her eyes straight ahead rather than looking at her.
お前は犯人の指示をメモに取っているな。日記に。じゃあそのページだけ破って、歩きながらそれとなく捨ててくれ。わかったよ。
The light turned green. People began to surge forward. Once she got to the other end of the crosswalk, Tsubaki looked back behind her. Haru was already nowhere to be seen. Even now, Tsubaki had a sense of resistance to littering. But when she realized Haru would pick it up immediately, she felt a little better about it. 2 hours and 10 minutes have passed. If one hurried, they should have been able to get from the park to Sakuraogi City in 2 hours. If it takes Tsubaki any longer, there is again the possibility of police involvement. I, of course, am still on Central Boulevard. After finishing all my preparations, I sat in the back seat of the car and gazed at the scenery outside. The populace ignored the cruelty of the winter's cold, and the street grew even livelier. A panicked voice came through from the other end of the line. I hope you didn't lose the key.
ちゃんと持ってます。どうすればいいんですか?
I gave her the instruction decided upon a long time ago. Come back. Ignoring Tsubaki, who was in an utterly morbid state, I continued. Come back and retrieve the briefcase from the locker.
どうしてですか?
There's no reason for me to explain.
だって何のためにこんな遠くまで?
To get the ransom, of course.
ひょっとしてまだ警察のことを疑っているんですか?
Who knows?
だったらこんなことは無駄です。本当に警察には連絡してないんですから。
It's clear from her voice that she would like nothing better than to just give me the ransom right this second. There's no police involvement.
はい、絶対です。
There's a reason she had to go from Tomanbetsu to Sakuraogi City. Police take their respective jurisdictions seriously. If Tsubaki was being backed by the police, then this kidnapping investigation would have to be transferred to the other prefecture. Thus, the arrangement of personnel would be put into disorder once more. Such an event would considerably hinder police mobilization in this prefecture. Of course, there is a chance that the police departments have made contact previously and are working together. However, police are people who are very conspicuous of territory, if not quite at a Yakuza level. According to my judgment, the police of Tomanbetsu and Sakuraogi City won't rally together just for a kidnapping incident. Still, it's a good thing I didn't send her to Tokyo. That was my original plan. I never would have guessed that this prefecture and the Tokyo Police Department keep an unexpectedly good relationship. I only found this out a short while ago. That was dangerous. Fine, I will believe you. Tsubaki's actions are swift without hesitation. At the very least, she shouldn't have had time to be in close contact with the police. Next time, I promise. Next time, I will retrieve the ransom. I was finally confident that I had done enough to preclude the police's involvement and continue on with this battle. Take the subway to the residential area in the southern district. I'm going to give you the address you need to go to. Tsubaki confirmed the address after I told her the details. A white car will be parked there. Its door will be unlocked. Take the ransom and sit in the back seat. Wait for me to arrive. Are you uneasy? Does the thought of being in a cramped car alone with me frighten you? I laughed coldly. I was hoping to go for a ride. I'm really looking forward to it. I hung up and commanded the driver to go. After another 2 hours or so, Tsubaki stepped back onto Central Boulevard. The sun sets early in winter. It was already evening by the time she arrived at the southern district.
Oi, Tsubaki.
It was Haru. She had suddenly appeared behind Tsubaki, calling her name. Haru spoke abruptly.
お前が桜荻町に行っている間、私はケースの入ったロッカーをずっと見張っていた。ロッカーを開けようとした不審な人物はいなかった。そうなんだ。
She didn't go with me to Sakuraogi City.
椿を追うか、ロッカーを見張るか。迷ったが後者を選択した。なぜなら、誘拐犯が鍵を手に入れたとしても、身代金が欲しければ、必ずロッカーを開けなければならないからだ。
Haru's explanation was more than enough to wipe away the anxiety in Tsubaki's heart.
もう少し人手があればよかった。
Haru said these words with a hint of loneliness. The moment she finished, she once again disappeared into the sea of people. Tsubaki felt an ache in her heart. Maybe Haru doesn't even have a single friend that she can rely on. Without thinking, she murmured. If Kyosuke were with me, I'm certain I'd have all the courage I needed. Tsubaki savagely whipped her weak heart for that sentiment. Wishing for unobtainable things won't bring her brother back to her. Her grip on the briefcase tightened as she headed toward the southern district. She had no idea why she called out Kyosuke's name. Tsubaki has pretty much never been there before, and the southern district is, as a whole, a very quiet residential area. The setting sun has dyed the newly built western houses and the metal fences surrounding them a bloody red. Tsubaki checked the address again as she searched for her destination. She saw the car. It was her everyday white sedan. Tsubaki didn't know what the kidnapper's car would be like. Thankfully, there was only one white car at the designated place. Sit in the back seat. Her heartbeat grew violent. She had never dreamed she'd be going on a ride with a kidnapper. He might even hold her captive. Nevertheless, in the end, she still wanted her brother to be released. And for Hiroaki, sacrificing herself would be an easy price to pay. Tsubaki walked closer to the car, trembling as she rounded the bumper. Hesitantly, she forced herself to peer through the window. There was no one inside. She decisively reached for the door handle. Tsubaki slid into the back seat. She put the briefcase containing the ransom on her knee, letting a deep breath flow from her lips to calm herself. Silence reigned. The car was almost completely devoid of sound. Small beads of sweat soaked through her palm. The only noise that reached her ears was her own heartbeat. The silence only made her wait more torturous. She was being tortured by anxiety. The moment she closed her eyes, Hiroaki's face floated before her. Where is he right now? Is he eating well? I just want to hurry up and see him. Hearing the ring of her cell, Tsubaki instinctively opened her eyes. She retrieved the cell from her pocket in a panic. It was the kidnapper. She didn't understand him. What does it matter how much the car costs? Tsubaki had read in a book before that man put great focus on appearances. To her, it was something incomprehensible. However, at that instant, the kidnapper suddenly lowered his voice. What? His voice changed. It lost the ease it once held. Her question wasn't answered. After a brief silence, the call was disconnected. Yet another unexpected event was hurled towards Tsubaki, still confused by the kidnapper's last words. Someone rapped on the car window. Following the sound, there was a face Tsubaki had never seen before. It stared her down emotionlessly. A hat and uniform. She trembled. Her jaw hung wide open. The one thing that criminals fear the most stood just beyond the car window. Police! Tsubaki sank into terror, having no idea what she should do about the sudden appearance of the police. Her knees were shaking. The police officer was asking her to get out. Her vision was hazy, dizziness gnawed at her, and her stomach lurched with every motion. Tsubaki stepped out like a mindless robot. When she opened the door, she put the briefcase down on the seat almost subconsciously. The man was repeating a question that she didn't know how to answer. Does this car belong to you? Tsubaki was more nervous than she had ever been in her life as she listened to the policeman's questions like an uninvolved bystander. What are you doing here? Tsubaki shook her head, making meaningless sounds such as ah and eh. She thought she managed to reply that everything was fine. However, the policeman kept on saying this is standard procedure, just answer. They also mentioned something about the possibility of the car being stolen and other things along that line. She was completely incoherent. She had never been spoken to by a police officer before. She almost sweat herself from fear. If the kidnapper saw her with the police, how would she explain? There are two of them. There are also two bicycles, but those are only fleeting images before her eyes. What's that briefcase? One policeman pointed to the car behind her. Can we check inside it? That question jerked her slightly back to her senses. A strange sense of purpose began to take hold of her. It was as soft as the buzz of a mosquito. Even though her head was lowered, she clearly demonstrated her rejection. She didn't know when it happened, but the policeman in front of her was holding a briefcase. It was the briefcase with the ransom inside. The briefcase containing her brother's life. If they looked through it, the police would know about the kidnapping. When this train of thought surged through her mind, fear that she'd never been able to see her brother again rushed toward her. That fear purged all reason, and Tsubaki lost track of her own actions. A freakish scream burst forth into the air. She reached out her hands and grabbed something as tightly as she could. Her fingertips felt the cool, hard shell of the briefcase. The policeman said something, but Tsubaki never heard a word. She was running. She was facing away from the policeman. A yell for her to stop may have reached her back, but not her brain. Fear. Yet her legs, as if they didn't belong to her but some other animal, kept on sprinting. She ran away, wordless, panting, dizzy, almost falling down. She felt as if she too had become a criminal. Driven by the guilt and oxygen deprivation, her tears couldn't be stopped anymore. But there was no time for her to cry anymore. Having successfully escaped and now making her way through the bustling crowd of Central Boulevard, Tsubaki was still on edge. She begged with all that she had. The kidnapper answered with a voice colder than those she had heard before. Well, she is the kind of person who apologizes for everything. The person on the other end of the line didn't let down his guard. She felt as if her head had just been struck by a blunt object. If this continues, Hiroaki's gone. By the end of her pleading, she was unable to even form sentences. Her eyes were filled with tears. At that, the kidnapper laughed coldly. He continued with a mocking tone. Tsubaki understood that comment even less. Everyone always says she's a good person. Kyosuke had even joked about it. But isn't everyone else good too? She just couldn't take it anymore. She lowered her head in thanks without thinking about it. Even in this outrageous situation, she still showed her gratitude to the criminal. Tsubaki was beginning to think that the kidnapper is still human after all. As long as she just asks him with sincerity, he'll understand. He might even have a good reason for kidnapping Hiroaki. For the first time, Tsubaki found herself interested in the kidnapper's thoughts and feelings. So interested, in fact, that she completely missed the point when she had stopped asking questions. The point when she became completely obedient.